The fluorescent lights hummed their usual tired song as David pushed his cleaning cart down the empty hallway. It was just past 9 in the evening and most of the offices sat dark and silent. This was his favorite time of day, honestly. No rushing employees bumping past him without a glance. No awkward moments where someone would stop mid-conversation when he entered a room, as if he'd interrupted something important just by existing. He'd been working the night shift at Sterling Corporate Plaza for almost 8 months now. The building housed 3 different companies across 12 floors, and David knew every corner of it. He knew which bathroom on the 7th floor had the leaky faucet that maintenance kept forgetting to fix. He knew that the break room on the 4th floor always smelled like burnt popcorn because someone inevitably set the microwave for too long. He knew the sound his cartwheels made changed depending on which type of flooring he rolled over. What he didn't know, not really, were the people who worked here. They were strangers who left behind coffee rings on desks and crumpled papers in trash bins. They were the owners of family photos he dusted around carefully and the authors of sticky notes he'd never read. Well, except for one person. David stopped his cart outside office 1147. The light was still on, spilling out into the hallway through the frosted glass door. He checked his watch. She was here late again. That made it 4 nights this week. He knocked softly, 2 quick taps with his knuckle. "Come in," a woman's voice called out. David opened the door and nodded politely. "Evening, ma'am. Just checking if you need a few more minutes before I clean." Lisa Chen looked up from her computer screen, pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had gone messy somewhere between morning and now. She had that worn-out look people get when they've been staring at a screen too long. "Oh, hi. Yes, if you don't mind. I just need maybe 15 minutes to finish this email. No problem at all." "I'll come back." David pulled the door closed and moved his cart down to the next office. This had become their routine over the past few months. Lisa worked late at least 3 or 4 times a week, and David always checked before entering her space. Some of the cleaning crew just barged in regardless, but David didn't work that way. Everyone deserved a little respect, even if they were just sitting in an office typing on a keyboard. He worked through the neighboring offices methodically, emptied the trash bins, wiped down the desks, vacuumed the floors, cleaned the windows if they needed it. Each office took him about 12 minutes. He'd timed it once. The work was repetitive, sure, but he didn't mind. There was something almost meditative about it. Plus, it paid better than his morning job at the warehouse, and the building was warm in winter and cool in summer. 20 minutes later, he returned to office 1147. The light was still on, but this time Lisa was standing by the window, phone pressed to her ear. She waved him in and mouthed sorry while pointing at the phone. David nodded and began his routine. He moved quietly, emptying her small trash bin into the larger bag on his cart. Her office was always neater than most. No food wrappers, no scattered papers everywhere. Just organized stacks of folders and a coffee mug that said, "World's Okayest Manager," which always made him smile a little. "Mom, I told you I can't make it this Sunday," Lisa was saying into her phone, frustration creeping into her voice. "I have a presentation Monday morning and I'm nowhere near ready." I know it's been 3 weeks. I'm not avoiding the family. I'm swamped right now." David worked around her, wiping down her desk with careful attention to not disturb anything. He'd learned the layout of her space. The 3 pens always went on the right side of her notebook. The small succulent plant stayed by the window. The framed photo of her with an older couple, probably her parents, faced slightly toward her chair. "I have to go, Mom. Yes, I'll try for next weekend. Love you too, bye." Lisa ended the call and let out a long breath. She turned and seemed surprised to find David still there, even though she'd waved him in. "Sorry about that," she said, tucking her phone into her pocket. "Nothing to apologize for." "Ma'am?" David moved to vacuum the small rug under her desk. "Do you work here every night?" she asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. In 8 months, maybe 3 people had asked him anything beyond, "Are you almost done?" He turned off the vacuum. "Monday through Friday, yes ma'am, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. "That's a long shift." She leaned against her desk, arms crossed, looking at him like she was actually seeing him for the first time. "It's honest work," David said. "Pays the bills. I guess we're both here late then. Though I should probably head home soon. My apartment's just going to be dark and empty anyway, so what's the rush, right? She laughed, but it sounded hollow. David didn't know what to say to that. He wasn't used to personal conversations at this job. Most people treated him like part of the furniture. Useful, necessary, but not someone you talk to about your empty apartment. Well, I hope you have a good evening, ma'am. He turned the vacuum back on, signaling the end of the conversation in the politest way he knew how. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Lisa started staying late more often, and their brief exchanges grew slightly longer. She'd ask how his night was going. He'd ask if she wanted her window blinds open or closed. Small things, normal things, but they felt significant somehow. One Thursday night, David arrived at her office to find her rubbing her temples, staring at her computer screen like it had personally offended her. Headache? He asked, migraine more like. I've been staring at spreadsheets for 6 hours straight. She looked up at him. You ever feel like you're working really hard but going absolutely nowhere? David thought about his own life. 2 jobs, 14-hour days between them. Living in a 1-bedroom apartment with his teenage daughter. Working toward goals that seemed to move further away the harder he chased them. Sometimes, he said carefully, but then I think about why I'm doing it and it makes the hard parts easier to handle. Yeah? What's your why? He hesitated. This was more personal than they'd ever gotten, but something about the late hour in the quiet building made it feel okay to share. My daughter, she's 16, smart as anything. She wants to be a civil engineer. I'm making sure she can go to any college she gets into without drowning in debt like I did. Lisa's expression softened. That's a good why. Better than mine. What's yours? She laughed that hollow laugh again. Honestly, I'm not sure anymore. I thought climbing the corporate ladder was supposed to mean something. But I'm sitting here on a Thursday night eating vending machine dinners and sending emails nobody will read until Monday. My ex-husband was right. I married my job instead of him. David didn't know how to respond to that. He focused on wiping down her desk, giving her space to say more if she wanted to. Sorry, she said quickly. That was too much. You don't need to hear about my failed marriage while you're trying to work. It's all right, ma'am. Sometimes it helps to say things out loud. My grandmother used to tell me that keeping everything inside just makes it heavier to carry. Your grandmother sounds wise. She was? They fell into a comfortable silence as David finished cleaning. When he was done, he pushed his cart toward the door. Hey, Lisa called out. He turned back. What's your name? I've been calling you the cleaning guy. In my head for months, and that seems really rude. No, David Porter. I'm Lisa. Though you probably already knew that from the nameplate. Nice to officially meet you. Miss Chen. Just Lisa's fine. David nodded and continued with his rounds. But something had changed. The invisible wall between them had developed a crack. The following week, Lisa was there every single night. David started to wonder if she actually went home at all. On Tuesday, he found her asleep at her desk, face down on a stack of papers. He quietly cleaned around her and left without waking her. On Wednesday, she was pacing her office on a phone call that sounded heated and corporate. On Thursday, she was just sitting in the dark, staring out the window at the city lights below. Lights off tonight? David asked from the doorway. She turned and he could see she'd been crying. She wiped her face quickly. Just needed a break from the brightness, I guess. He should have just backed out and come back later. That would have been the professional thing to do. But something stopped him. Mind if I ask what's wrong? You can tell me it's none of my business. I won't be offended. Lisa let out a shaky breath. Do you ever feel invisible? Like you're working your whole life and nobody actually sees you? David almost laughed at the irony. He'd felt invisible every single day for most of his adult life. People looked past him, through him, around him. He was background noise in everyone else's story. Yeah, he said quietly. I know that feeling pretty well. I got passed over for a promotion today. 3rd time in 2 years. They gave it to Derek, who spends half his day playing golf with clients and the other half taking credit for other people's work. But he's good at the game, you know? The networking, the politics. And I'm just not, that doesn't seem fair. Fair? She laughed bitterly. Nothing about this place is fair. But I keep showing up, keep working late, keep hoping that if I just work hard enough, someone will notice. Stupid, right? Not stupid, hopeful. There's a difference. She looked at him for a long moment. How do you stay hopeful? With everything you're dealing with, working 2 jobs, raising a daughter alone. How do you not just give up? David thought about it. I guess because giving up doesn't change anything. At least hoping gives you a reason to wake up tomorrow and try again, and maybe tomorrow's the day things start to get better. That's either very wise or very naive. I can't tell which, maybe a little of both. Lisa smiled for the first time all night, a real smile, not the tired professional one she usually wore. Thanks, David, for listening. And for not making me feel stupid for caring so much about a job that clearly doesn't care about me. You're not stupid. And for what it's worth, I think any company that doesn't see your value is making a big mistake. She blinked, seeming surprised by his words. That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me in months. David felt heat rise to his face. Just calling it like I see it. I'll let you get back to it. Good night, Miss Lisa. Good night, David. As he pushed his cart down the hallway, David couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just happened. He couldn't name it exactly, but the invisible wall between them had cracked a little wider. And through that crack, two people who lived in completely different worlds had seen each other. Really seen each other. And somehow, that changed everything. The next few weeks brought a strange new rhythm to David's nights. Lisa stopped pretending she had urgent work keeping her at the office late. She'd admitted one night while he was emptying her trash bin that she just didn't like going home to an empty apartment. Her divorce had been finalized 6 months ago and she still hadn't gotten used to the silence. My ex kept the house, she'd told him. Said he deserved it since he'd picked it out. Never mind that I'd paid half the mortgage for 8 years. Anyway, I ended up in this tiny place downtown. It's nice enough, I guess, but it doesn't feel like home. Nothing feels like home anymore. David had understood that more than she knew. After his wife passed away 4 years ago, his whole house had felt wrong. Every room reminded him of her absence. He'd almost moved, but his daughter Zoe had begged him not to. It was the only home she'd ever known. The place where her mom's memory still lived in the kitchen where she'd taught Zoe to make pancakes. In the garden she'd planted with flowers that somehow still bloomed every spring. So he'd stayed. And eventually the house had stopped feeling haunted and started feeling like a place where they were learning to live again, just differently than before. Give it time, he'd told Lisa. Eventually you'll put enough of yourself into it that it starts to feel like yours. She'd looked at him thoughtfully. Is that what you did? After your wife passed? He'd been surprised she remembered. He'd mentioned it only once weeks ago in passing, but she'd held on to that detail, filed it away like it mattered. Yeah, he'd said. That's what I did. Their conversations had grown longer, deeper. David found himself looking forward to cleaning her office, which was a strange thing to admit even to himself. She'd started bringing 2 cups of coffee sometimes, offering him one while he worked. He'd declined at first, not wanting to cross any professional lines, but she'd insisted. David, you're the only person in this entire building who talks to me like I'm an actual human being. The least I can do is share my overpriced coffee with you. So he'd accepted and they'd fallen into an easy pattern. He'd clean, she'd work, and they'd talk about everything and nothing. He learned she'd studied marketing in college but had wanted to be a photographer. She learned he'd been 3 semesters away from a business degree when his wife got sick, and he'd had to drop out to work full-time. He learned she had a younger brother who taught English in Japan. She learned his daughter wanted to build bridges, literally, which made him prouder than anything else in his life. You talk about her like she's already changed the world, Lisa had said one night. Smiling, she will, David had replied without hesitation. She's got this way of seeing problems and figuring out solutions. Even when she was little, she'd look at something broken and just know how to fix it. She gets that from you, probably. From her mother, more like. I'm just the guy who makes sure she's got the opportunities to use those gifts. It was during one of these conversations, on a rainy Tuesday in late October, that everything shifted again. Lisa had been quieter than usual that evening. When David arrived at her office, she was sitting in the dark again, but this time she wasn't crying. She was just thinking, her expression intense and focused. You okay? He asked from the doorway. Actually, yeah. I think I might be. Can I run something by you? David wheeled his cart inside. Sure. So you know how I got passed over for that promotion? She didn't wait for him to answer. Well, I've been thinking about why. And I realized it's because I keep playing by their rules, trying to fit into their mold of what a successful executive looks like. But that's never going to work for me. I'm not Derek. I can't schmooze and golf and pretend to care about things I don't care about. Okay, David said, not sure where this was going. But what I am good at is seeing what actually matters, understanding what real people need, not just what looks good in a presentation. And I was thinking about what you said about your daughter, about seeing problems and finding solutions. That's what I used to be good at before I got caught up in all the corporate nonsense. She stood up, energized now. The company is launching this big community outreach initiative. They want to partner with local neighborhoods, help small businesses, do some good publicity. But the whole thing is being designed by people who've never set foot in those neighborhoods. They're creating programs based on what they think people need, not what they actually need. David had stopped cleaning and was listening carefully now. He knew exactly what she meant. He'd seen plenty of corporate outreach programs in his neighborhood. Companies showing up with their branded t-shirts and their cameras, handing out donations for a day, then disappearing, taking their pictures and their tax write-offs and leaving nothing that actually helped. Let me guess, he said. They'll throw some money at it, get their good press, and nothing will actually change. Exactly. But what if it could be different? What if we actually talked to people who live in these communities, found out what they really need, built something that lasts? That would be different, David agreed. But companies don't usually work that way. I know, but maybe this one could if someone pushed hard enough. She looked at him directly. David, you live in Riverside, right? You've mentioned it a few times. Yeah, been there about 12 years. That's one of the neighborhoods they want to target. And I was thinking... She paused like she was working up courage. What if you helped me? Not officially, obviously. But what if I picked your brain about what would actually help? What the real problems are? You know that community. You're part of it. David felt something uncomfortable twist in his stomach. He wasn't sure if it was excitement or worry or both. I'm just a sanitation worker, he said carefully. I'm not some kind of community expert, but you live there. You see things. You probably know more about what would actually help than anyone in a corner office who's just looking at demographics on a spreadsheet. She had a point. He did know things. He knew that the rec center closed at 6 because they couldn't afford to staff it later, which meant kids had nowhere safe to go after school. He knew that Mrs. Patterson ran a food pantry out of her garage because the nearest food bank was 2 bus rides away. He knew that half the streetlights on Maple Avenue had been broken for 3 years because the city kept saying they'd fix them, but never did. What would this even look like? He asked. I don't know exactly. Maybe we just talk. You tell me what you see, what you know would help, and I take that information and use it to make this program actually worthwhile. I'll do all the corporate stuff, the presentations, the paperwork. You just share what you know. And what do I get out of this? The question came out harsher than he'd meant it. But he'd learned a long time ago that people from Lisa's world didn't usually offer to help people from his world without wanting something in return. Lisa didn't look offended, though. She just nodded like she'd expected the question. That's fair. Honestly, I can't promise much. Maybe if this works, if I can get the executives to actually listen, there might be a consultant fee, or at least some recognition. But I'm not going to lie to you and say this is some guaranteed opportunity. It might go nowhere. They might ignore everything I say, but at least we'd have tried to do something real. David thought about it. There was risk here. Getting involved in company business, even unofficially, could complicate things. But there was also possibility. A chance to actually help his neighborhood instead of just watching it struggle. Okay, he said finally. I'll help. But on one condition. Name it. If you use any of my ideas, if anything I share actually makes it into this program, you have to promise me it'll be done right. Not some half-hearted publicity stunt. Real help that actually lasts. Lisa extended her hand. Deal. They shook on it, and David felt like he'd just stepped through a door he couldn't see but knew was there. Over the next week, they started meeting more intentionally. Lisa would stay late, and instead of just chatting while he cleaned, they'd sit down and really talk. She'd take notes on her laptop while he described the challenges he saw every day. He told her about how the bus routes changed last year, making it nearly impossible for people working 2 jobs to get to both on time. He told her about the after-school program that shut down because of funding cuts, and how teenage kids now hung around the corner store because there was nowhere else to go. He told her about the small businesses struggling because they didn't have the money for digital marketing or online ordering systems, so they were losing customers to chains. Lisa listened to everything, asked questions, took pages of notes. She didn't dismiss anything or suggest simple solutions to complex problems. She just tried to understand. This is exactly what I needed, she said one night scrolling through her notes. Real information from someone who actually lives this every day. The marketing team was literally planning to donate laptops to schools without even checking if the schools had reliable internet. Your input is going to make this actually mean something. David felt a strange mix of pride and discomfort. He wasn't used to his perspective being valued like this, especially not by someone in Lisa's position. When are you presenting this to your bosses? He asked. Next Friday. I'm terrified, honestly, but also more excited about work than I've been in years. The next Friday came faster than David expected. He worked his usual shift, trying not to think too much about Lisa's presentation happening in some conference room many floors above, where he pushed his cleaning cart. But he couldn't help wondering how it went. He got his answer when he reached her office that night. The lights were on, and through the frosted glass he could see Lisa pacing, phone pressed to her ear. Mom, I know it's late, but I had to call someone. It went well. Better than well. They loved it. They actually listened. Her voice was bright with excitement. I'm not saying this fixes everything, but it's a start. A real start. David smiled and moved to the next office, giving her privacy. When he came back 20 minutes later, she was off the phone and practically bouncing with energy. David. It worked. I mean, they had questions and concerns, and I'm sure there'll be a million hoops to jump through. But they want to move forward. They actually want to implement these ideas. That's great, he said, and meant it. Congratulations. This is because of you. You know that, right? None of this would have happened without your help. I just told you what I saw. You're the one who turned it into something they could use. We're a good team, she said. And something about the way she said it made David's chest feel tight. But that good feeling didn't last long. The next week, David started noticing things. The way other cleaners looked at him when he worked on the 11th floor. The way conversations would stop when he rolled his cart past office doors. The whispers that followed him down hallways. One of his co-workers, Raymond, finally said something in the break room. Hey man, what's going on with you and that executive lady on 11? Nothing's going on. I helped clean her office. That's it. That's not what people are saying. They're saying you're up there every night behind closed doors having long conversations. We talk sometimes. So what? Raymond lowered his voice. Look, I'm just trying to look out for you. People in her world don't usually spend time with people in our world unless they want something. And once they get it, they move on. Don't get yourself caught up in something that's going to end badly. David wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Because Raymond was right, wasn't he? This whole situation was unusual. Strange. Maybe even inappropriate. But when he got to Lisa's office that night and saw her excitement as she showed him the preliminary plans for the community program, how they'd incorporated nearly every idea he'd shared, he pushed those doubts aside. Look at this, she said, pointing at her screen. They're allocating budget for a community center with extended hours, and they're partnering with local businesses to create a small business incubator. David, this is real. This is actually going to help people. This is amazing, he said quietly. They want to do a site visit next month. They want to actually go to Riverside and see the community, and... She hesitated. They asked if I knew anyone local who could give them a tour. Someone who could speak authentically about the neighborhood. David's stomach dropped. You told them about me? Not specifically. I just said I had a consultant helping me. I didn't use your name. But David, this could be an opportunity for you. To be heard, to be seen as more than just the guy who cleans their offices. The words came out bitter. Lisa's face fell. That's not what I meant. But it's true, isn't it? You want me to be your show and tell, your authentic voice from the community, proof that your program is real. That's not fair. This whole thing was about actually helping people, including you. I thought you'd want to be part of making it happen. At what cost? I've got people talking about me at work already, wondering why I'm spending so much time with you. You think it's going to get better if I suddenly start showing up to corporate meetings? I'm a night shift sanitation worker, Lisa. That's my job. That's my place here. And the moment I forget that, the moment I start thinking I'm something more, that's when everything falls apart. Lisa looked like he'd slapped her. Your place? David, you're one of the smartest people I've ever met. You see things clearly, you solve problems, you care about your community. Why should you be limited by what some broken system says your place is? Because that's reality. You can afford to dream about changing things. I can't. I've got a daughter depending on me. Bills to pay. I can't risk my job because I got ideas above my station. Ideas above your station? Listen to yourself.
When did you start believing that?
The question hit him hard because he didn't have an answer. Or maybe he did, but it was too painful to admit. He'd been believing it for years, maybe his whole life. The world had taught him to stay in his lane, and he'd learned the lesson well. "I should finish my rounds," he said quietly. "David, wait." But he was already pushing his cart toward the door. He heard her call his name again, but he didn't stop. He couldn't, because if he stopped, he might say something he'd regret. Or worse, he might say yes to something that would change everything. And change was terrifying even when it promised to be good. For the rest of that night, David worked on autopilot. Empty, wipe, vacuum, repeat. His hands moved through familiar motions while his mind churned with confusion and doubt, and something that felt dangerously close to hope. Raymond had been right to warn him. He'd crossed lines he shouldn't have crossed. He'd let himself forget for a few brief weeks that people like him and people like Lisa lived in different worlds. Those worlds might bump up against each other, might even overlap at the edges, but they didn't merge. They couldn't. By the time his shift ended at 5 in the morning, David had convinced himself that he needed to step back. Keep things professional. Just clean the offices and go home. It was safer that way. Simpler. But as he walked to his car in the cold pre-dawn light, he couldn't shake the memory of Lisa's excitement when she showed him those program plans. The way she'd said we're a good team, like she actually meant it. Like his ideas mattered. Like he mattered. And that was the most dangerous feeling of all. David avoided Lisa's office for 3 days straight. He'd time his rounds so that by the time he reached the 11th floor, her light was already off and she'd gone home. It wasn't hard to do. He knew her patterns. Knew she usually left around 10:30 on Mondays and Wednesdays. So he'd work those offices first, then circle back later when the coast was clear. It was cowardly, he knew that. But it felt necessary. On Thursday night, his plan fell apart. He'd miscalculated, arrived at her office at what should have been a safe time, only to find her light blazing and her door wide open. She was sitting at her desk, but the moment she saw him in the hallway, she stood up. "David, can we talk?" Every instinct told him to say no, to make an excuse, to keep moving. But he'd never been good at running from uncomfortable conversations. His wife used to tease him about it. "You'd rather face a firing squad than leave something unsaid," she'd told him once. So he stopped. "Yeah, we can talk." Lisa closed her laptop and gestured to the chair across from her desk. David hesitated, then sat down. He'd never sat in her office before. It felt strange being on this side of things. Usually he was the one standing, working, moving through spaces that didn't belong to him. "I've been thinking about what you said," Lisa started. "About your place, about the risk. And you're right. I wasn't thinking about what this could cost you. I got excited about the program and I didn't stop to consider that your reality is different from mine." David nodded slowly. "I appreciate that. But I also think you're wrong about something." He looked up, surprised. "You said you have ideas above your station." "But David, there is no station. That's just a story we tell ourselves. A story that makes it easier for people like me to stay comfortable, while people like you do the hard work that keeps everything running. And I'm done with that story. Lisa, it's not about stories. It's about reality. I've got responsibilities. I can't just—" "I'm not asking you to risk anything," she interrupted. "I already told my boss that I worked with a community consultant. I didn't give your name. I didn't mention that you work here. As far as they know, you're just someone I connected with through networking. If you want to stay anonymous, you can. But I couldn't move forward without making sure you were okay with everything." David felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "So I don't have to do anything?" "You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, but—" She paused. "There is something you should know. They approved the budget. The program is moving forward. And it's going to help people in your neighborhood. Real tangible help. That happened because you trusted me enough to share what you know. So whether you step into the light or stay behind the scenes, you've already made a difference." Something tightened in David's chest. When was the last time someone had told him he'd made a difference? When was the last time his knowledge, his experience had mattered to anyone beyond his immediate family? "Thank you," he said quietly, "for keeping my name out of it. Of course. Though for what it's worth, I think you're selling yourself short. You could do this work, David. You could be the person who bridges these worlds. You're smart enough, articulate enough. You see things others miss. I dropped out of college. I worked 2 jobs cleaning and moving boxes. Nobody's going to take me seriously in a room full of executives. I take you seriously, and I'm in those rooms. You're different. Why? Because I have a degree and a title? Those are just pieces of paper and words. They don't make me better than you or smarter than you. They just mean I had different opportunities. David wanted to believe her. Part of him did believe her, but another part, the part that had been shaped by years of being overlooked and dismissed, couldn't quite accept it. Can I think about it? He asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Lisa, why does this matter so much to you? You could have just done the program your way, taken the credit, moved on. Why involve me at all? She was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. Because I'm tired of doing things the wrong way just because it's easier. And because talking to you reminded me why I got into this work in the first place. Not for the title or the paycheck, but because I actually wanted to help people. You made me remember that, so thank you. David nodded and left, his mind spinning with possibilities he wasn't sure he was brave enough to reach for. The next week, everything started moving fast. Lisa was in meetings constantly, barely at her desk even when David came by late at night. When they did cross paths, she'd update him quickly. The site visit was scheduled. The community center partnership was in the works. Local business owners were being contacted about the incubator program. It was all happening, and David felt strangely detached from it, even though he'd helped plant the seeds. Then one Tuesday afternoon, his phone rang while he was on his lunch break at the warehouse. A known number. Hello? Is this David Porter? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yes, this is David. Mr. Porter, my name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm the Director of Community Relations at Sterling Corporate Plaza. Lisa Chen gave me your number. I hope that's all right? David's heart started beating faster. Yeah. That's fine. Lisa speaks very highly of you. She mentioned you've been consulting on our Riverside initiative, and I was hoping we could meet to discuss your potential involvement going forward. We'd like to bring you on in a more official capacity. Official capacity? David repeated dumbly. Yes. As a paid community liaison, you'd help us ensure the program stays connected to the real needs of the neighborhood. The compensation would be $1,500 a month to start, with room to grow as the program expands. Would you be interested in discussing this further? $1,500. That was almost half his monthly rent. For sharing what he already knew about his own neighborhood. I'd need to know more about what it would involve, and David managed to say. Of course. Are you available to meet Thursday at 2? Thursday at 2, right in the middle of his warehouse shift. He'd have to ask for time off, and his supervisor wasn't exactly generous about that kind of thing. Can we do it later in the day? Maybe 5 or 6? There was a pause. That's a bit unusual, but I think we can make it work. Let's say 5:30 Thursday. I'll have Lisa there as well since she's been coordinating everything. After he hung up, David just sat there in his car, staring at nothing. This was real. This was actually happening. A part of him wanted to call Zoe immediately, share the news. But another part was terrified. What if he walked into that meeting and they realized he wasn't what they thought? What if they expected some polished professional and got just a regular guy who happened to know his neighborhood? That evening, he did tell Zoe. She was at the kitchen table doing homework when he got home from the warehouse. Hey, Dad, she said without looking up from her textbook. There's leftover pasta in the fridge if you're hungry. I'm good, but I need to tell you something. Something in his tone made her look up. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Actually, something might be right. But I need you to tell me if I'm being crazy. He explained everything. The conversations with Lisa. The community program. The phone call from Jennifer Walsh. Zoe listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from curious to surprised to something that looked almost like pride. Dad, this is amazing. Why do you sound so worried? Because what if I mess it up? What if I'm not good enough for this? Zoe closed her textbook and looked at him with an intensity that reminded him so much of her mother it hurt. Dad, you're the person who helped me understand trigonometry when my teacher couldn't explain it. You're the one who figured out how to fix Mrs. Patterson's furnace when she couldn't afford a repairman. You know how many times I've watched you solve problems that other people said were impossible? That's different. That's just life stuff. No, that's exactly the same. They want someone who understands the community and can solve problems. That's literally you. You've been doing this your whole life. You just weren't getting paid for it or getting a fancy title. When did you get so smart? I learned from the best. She smiled. You should do this, Dad. You deserve this. And those people in Riverside deserve someone who actually cares about them, not some corporate person who's just checking boxes. David felt his eyes getting wet. He blamed it on being tired. "Thanks, kid. That's what I'm here for. Now go eat something. You look exhausted." Thursday came too fast and too slow at the same time. David spent the whole day at the warehouse distracted, nearly dropping a box on his foot because he wasn't paying attention. His supervisor noticed. "You sick or something, Porter?" "No, sir. Just tired." "Well, wake up before you hurt yourself." At 4:30, David clocked out and drove straight to Sterling Plaza. He'd worn his best clothes, a button-down shirt and slacks that he usually saved for parent-teacher conferences. He felt ridiculous and out of place as he walked through the main lobby instead of the service entrance he normally used. The security guard at the front desk looked at him suspiciously. "Can I help you?" "I have a meeting with Jennifer Walsh, Community Relations." The guard checked his computer, then looked surprised. "5th floor. Take the elevator on the left." The elevator ride felt surreal. David had cleaned these elevators hundreds of times, but he'd never ridden them during business hours, never been surrounded by people in suits carrying briefcases and talking on phones. He felt invisible again, but in a different way than usual. The 5th floor reception area was all glass and chrome. A young woman at the desk smiled professionally. "Mr. Porter?" "Yes, they're ready for you." "Conference room B, just down that hall." David's hands were sweating. He wiped them on his slacks and walked down the hall, each step feeling heavier than the last. Through the glass walls of conference room B, he could see Lisa sitting at a large table with an older woman in a navy suit. Jennifer Walsh, presumably. He knocked softly and Lisa jumped up to open the door. "David, hi. Come in." Jennifer stood and extended her hand. She was probably in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to evaluate everything. "Mr. Porter, thank you for coming. Please sit." David sat across from them, acutely aware of every movement he made. Jennifer pulled out a folder and opened it. "Lisa has filled me in on your insights regarding the Riverside community. I have to say, your perspective has been invaluable. The program we're developing is significantly more grounded because of your input." "Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to discuss bringing you on as a community liaison. Essentially, you'd be our boots on the ground in Riverside. You'd attend our planning meetings, provide feedback on initiatives, help us connect with local residents and business owners. We're looking at about 10 hours a week to start." 10 hours a week. David did quick math. That would mean cutting back somewhere else. Maybe dropping a few shifts at the warehouse. "Can I ask what kinds of things I'd be doing specifically?" Jennifer outlined the role. Attending meetings, yes, but also doing site visits, talking to residents, helping coordinate events. It sounded reasonable. More than reasonable. It sounded interesting. The compensation is $1,500 a month to start. After 6 months, we'd reevaluate based on the program's progress. "That sounds fair," David said carefully. "Excellent. I'll have HR draw up a contract. We'd like you to start." Jennifer's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. "I apologize, I need to take this. It'll just be a moment." She stepped out of the conference room. Lisa turned to David immediately. "You're doing great." She's impressed. "How can you tell?" "Because she's not dismissing anything you say." That's huge for her. She's usually pretty skeptical. "I feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not." "You're not pretending anything. You're just being yourself in a different context." Jennifer came back in, but her expression had changed. She looked uncomfortable. "I apologize, but something's come up that I need to address." "David, would it be possible to reschedule the rest of this conversation? Perhaps next week?" "Of course," David said, confused by the sudden shift. After he left, walking back through the lobby in a daze, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone wrong. But what? The meeting had been going well, hadn't it? He got his answer 3 hours later during his cleaning shift. He was working on the 8th floor when he ran into Raymond again. "Man, people are talking," Raymond said, shaking his head. "About what?" "About you. Someone saw you in the building this afternoon. Dressed up, going to meetings. Now everyone's saying you're trying to move up, trying to become management or something, and they're not happy about it." "I'm not trying to become management. I'm just helping with a community program." That's not how they see it. They see a guy who's forgetting where he came from. Getting cozy with the executives. You know how it is. David did know. He'd seen it before when other workers tried to improve their situations. There was always suspicion, always judgment, as if wanting something better for yourself was a betrayal. But the worst part came later that night. David was in the break room on his lunch break when his supervisor, Tom, walked in. "Porter, got a minute?" "Sure." Tom closed the door behind him. Listen, I heard you've been having meetings with corporate people during work hours. That true? I had one meeting. I used personal time. Okay, but here's the thing. You work for the sanitation company, not for Sterling. You're contracted here. If you're doing side work for Sterling directly, that's a conflict of interest. Could cause problems with the contract. David felt his stomach drop. I didn't think about that. Look, I'm not trying to bust your chops, but you need to be careful. If the company thinks you're trying to go around them, work directly for the client, they might not appreciate it. Could affect your position here. After Tom left, David sat alone in the break room, his head in his hands. This was getting complicated in ways he hadn't anticipated. He'd thought the biggest obstacle would be his own fear, his own doubts about whether he was good enough. He hadn't considered all the other ways this could go wrong. His phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. Jennifer just told me something came up in legal. They're reviewing the liaison position to make sure there's no conflict with your current employment. Might take a few days. Don't worry, we'll figure it out, don't worry. Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one caught between two worlds, belonging to neither, satisfying no one. David finished his shift in a fog. When he got to his car at 5 a.m, he sat there for a long time, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful and indifferent to all his problems, his phone rang. Zoe. Dad, where are you? I thought you'd be home by now. Just leaving work. Everything okay? Yeah, I wanted to make sure the meeting went well yesterday. You never texted me. David felt guilty. He'd been so wrapped up in his own spiral of worry that he'd forgotten to update his daughter. The meeting was fine, but there are some complications with the job. Might not work out after all. What kind of complications? He explained about the contract issues, the concerns from his supervisor, the whispers from coworkers. As he talked, he could hear himself making a decision, pulling back, choosing safety over possibility. Dad, stop. What? Stop talking yourself out of this. I can hear you doing it. You're listing all the reasons why it won't work instead of figuring out how to make it work. Zoe, it's not that simple. I know it's not simple. Nothing worth doing is simple. But you taught me that problems are just puzzles waiting to be solved. So solve this one. Talk to the company. Talk to Lisa. Figure it out. Just don't give up before you've even really tried. After he hung up, David sat there for another few minutes. His daughter was right. He was giving up. Already retreating back to familiar ground because unfamiliar ground was scary. But when had he become someone who let fear make his decisions? He pulled out his phone and texted Lisa. We need to talk. How do we fix the contract issue? Her response came almost immediately. Come by my office tonight. We'll figure it out together. And despite everything, despite all the complications and concerns and legitimate reasons to walk away, David felt something that had been missing for a long time. He felt hope. That night, David arrived at Lisa's office with a knot in his stomach that had been there all day. She was waiting for him. 2 cups of coffee already poured and sitting on her desk. The sight of it, that small gesture of consideration, somehow made him feel worse. Like he was about to disappoint her. Okay, she said as he sat down. I talked to HR and legal. The issue is that you're employed by Summit Sanitation Services, which has a contract with Sterling. If we hire you directly, Summit could see it as poaching, which violates their contract. So it's dead. The whole thing? Not necessarily. There are a few options. Lisa pulled up a document on her laptop. Option 1, you leave Summit and we hire you directly. Full-time position with benefits. It would pay about $40,000 a year to start. David did the math in his head. That was less than he made working both jobs combined, and no guarantee it would last beyond a year if the program didn't meet their expectations. What's option 2? Summit could subcontract you to us specifically for this liaison work. You'd stay employed by them, but they'd essentially loan you out part-time. They'd bill Sterling for your hours at a higher rate and presumably pay you more. You think Tom would go for that? I think it depends on how we present it. If he sees it as a new revenue stream, a way to expand Summit's relationship with Sterling, he might. David leaned back in his chair. Or he might see it as me going behind his back and fire me. That's the risk, Lisa admitted. Option 3 is we drop the liaison position entirely and just move forward with the program as planned. You go back to your regular work and we pretend this conversation never happened. That's what you want? God, no. David, your insight is what made this program real. Without you, it's just going to turn into another corporate initiative that looks good on paper and does nothing for actual people. But I also don't want to blow up your life. You've got responsibilities, a daughter counting on you. I can't ask you to risk that. David picked up one of the coffee cups and took a long sip. It had gone lukewarm. What would you do? If you were me? Lisa was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I don't know. A year ago, I would have said take the safe route every time. Keep your head down, don't make waves. But that's how I ended up divorced and miserable. Working late every night because I had nothing else to go home to. Playing it safe didn't make me happy. It just made me out small. But you had a safety net. A degree, savings, I don't have that luxury. You're right, and I'm not going to pretend our situations are the same. But I also know that you're the most capable person I've met in years. You solve problems most people don't even see. And you deserve a chance to do more than just survive. You deserve to actually build something. Pretty words don't pay the rent. No, they don't, but that liaison position does. And if we can figure out the contract issue, it could be the start of something bigger. Maybe you do it part-time for 6 months while keeping your other jobs. See how it goes. Test it out. You don't have to jump off a cliff. You can just take one step forward and see where it leads. David wanted to believe her, wanted to think it could be that simple, but nothing in his life had ever been simple. Let me talk to Tom, he said finally. See if option 2 is even possible before we get ahead of ourselves. Okay, and David? Whatever you decide, I'm grateful for what you've already done. You changed this program. You changed how I think about my work. That matters, whether you take the position or not. The next morning, David showed up at Tom's office at the Summit Sanitation Services warehouse. Tom looked surprised to see him during daytime hours. Porter? You're not on shift, I know. I needed to talk to you about something. Do you have a few minutes? Tom gestured to a chair. Make it quick. I've got a supply delivery coming. David laid it out as clearly as he could. The community program, his consulting work, Sterling's interest in bringing him on as a liaison. He framed it exactly how Lisa had suggested, as an opportunity for Summit to expand their relationship with their biggest client. Tom listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When David finished, Tom leaned back in his chair and sighed. So let me get this straight. Sterling wants to pay Summit extra to have you work on their community project instead of cleaning their offices. Part-time, yes. I'd still do my regular shifts, just maybe reduce the hours slightly. And you really think you can do both?